The difference is that when I am being a woman, that is my genuine identity. When someone is a drag queen or cross dressing or
Wait,
whatever, that is not their genuine identity. So mine trumps the others. I'm sorry. Me being myself is more important than someone not being themselves and
would
performing a false identity.
but this
Wearing
that them
clothing
being in
of
drag doesn't even like what that doesn't rob you of your identity. It's this false notion that this is what a man is supposed to wear and this is what a woman is supposed to wear. This is what they have to wear.
and I just think that that's the way it is, and I
That's
like the
just
way that it is. That
okay, and I don't like the way that it is. I want to wear clothing that more aligns with what I feel I would like to look like.
Well, I think that drag existed in the same time as blackface. If you look at the history, they existed coexistently together. I think that drag has just been able to manipulate people into thinking that it's woke and it allowed to exist
Okay,
despite the
but
dark.
you're still not addressing my question. You're saying okay, I don't care if it existed during the same time blackface did. So did a lot of art and performance. How does it oppress and hurt like societally the same way blackface did? What's up?
Hi, so I don't know if you saw the message I sent you, but I have a lot of like very interesting opinions, and I thought it'd be interesting to have a conversation. Was there anything I said in that? I mean, I can go over the list again, but was there anything I said that like stood out to you that you're like, oh, this is something that I really want to touch on?
I mean, I probably disagree with like the majority of I forget exactly all of what you said. If you want to read it all again.
Yeah, so I'm just going to read the tweet. I said, I'm a trans woman with unique and interesting views. I think most trans people online are cringy and a bad look. I'm strongly against drag queens. I'm pro life. I'm anti gun. I don't think conservatives are evil and conversations with them are normal and helpful. The US shouldn't take action in Ukraine because it's not our problem. Also, the Ukraine being transphobic, and that's a whole thing. I don't want to cause World War III. Trans women should probably be allowed to compete in sports. The trans child abuse law in Texas seems pretty scary. And then I was basically just like, usually when I talk to people, I have this long like essay of stuff. But when something like this happens last minute, those are just like a few of my views.
Okay, like views like trans. I think most trans people online are cringy. I guess like my response to that would be like I think most people online are cringy. I think if you give anybody a platform, really, but I think most people can't handle platforms on social media or can't handle to talking to thousands of people they don't really know at once. And so I think 95% of people are not set or should have a large platform because they suck at it. And so I think this is true of all people, and trans people included. I could probably make that statement about every group on the planet. Like I could probably I don't think I've met a Central African ever in my life, but I'm pretty sure that 95% of Central Africans are also like cringy on Twitter.
Yeah, those people come from like a different like cultural background. I'm saying like neo pronouns, people who use like pronouns that don't even exist and then claim to like they basically I'm a trans woman myself, right? So like they advocate for the same stuff as me, but like a normal person looks at that and then like that's gonna make them think weirdly of trans people. So I just think it's important that like the people that have these voices be like rational, sane people instead of people who think that like Zim or Zer is like a actual like pronoun you can call yourself.
I guess to be completely honest, I guess I really just don't care if somebody's cringy or has like opinions like that. I really definitely or if it looks cringy to like mainstream audiences. I mean like I feel like it being cringy or not even coming off well, while I do think optics are good, you could have said this about like most mainstream LGBTQ plus political issues for the last 50 years that like, oh, it's cringe. It's probably like pretty like gay marriage is like a lot when you really think about it. Maybe we should just aim for the partnerships or like it being not coming off well. I mean, while I do understand the optics concern and I do think messaging is king, do the best to be good at messaging. Um, the position like fundamentally I don't know anything about it, so it being cringy isn't really enough for me to like advocate against it.
Well, I think that it causes direct harm in my life. I mean, that's the reason I don't like drag queens and stuff because it's like I see this and it hinders my like I want to just be able to go out into the regular world and just be seen as a woman. But when
Uh-huh.
these people are saying, "Oh, I'm a woman, but I'm also like gonna, look and act all these weird ways," I'm just thinking to myself like, people will look at them and think that that's what I'm talking about when I say I'm
Wait, you
trans.
said drag queen, so you're talking about the neo pronouns. So I don't know enough about neo pronouns, I'm not the person to talk about it, but
Okay.
when it comes to drag queen and like these elements of queer culture that have been part of the queer community for like I mean much longer than I've even been alive, um I think the main issue is not these people existing and doing performances and just going about their daily life. I think the main issue is the people trying to target them and trying to misrepresent them and trying to like smear the queer community. This recent messaging is nothing new. There used to be promotional videos made with local school districts and police departments basically labeling all gay people as pedophiles and telling you how to basically like keep your killed children safe from the gays, right? Safe from the perversive gay. So this is just like updated messaging. Even if these people stopped their drag performances, they would just move on. I mean, it seems that the main issue of it is the expression of non-gender conforming behavior in front of children in and of itself is not right. It is wrong. It's sexual inherently. It's bad, which would apply to, I mean, not only drag queens, but hell, just even like feminine queer men, like the how like if I ever wanted to put bows in my hair or wear a dress, which I think that's ridiculous. I think that is something that should be pushed back against, that type of narrative.
Well, the thing is, first of all, I see the drag queen narrative all the time, like drag shouldn't perform in front of kids, and that's like I completely agree with that.
I
But I
disagree.
go even a step further. I would say that like why do you think drag should be okay to perform in front of kids? Like, have you seen the Drag Your Kids to Pride stuff? I mean, that stuff's like horrible.
Okay. Why do you think concerts should be in front of kids? Have you ever been to like a Def Leppard concert? I was there when I was 14 with my dad. There were blow up dolls in the audience. I was 14. I shouldn't have been around that. Why do you want to bring kids to concerts?
So the thing I would say to that is that's an issue with the parent because that concert wasn't made specifically for children. These drag events were marketed specifically towards children. So I think
Okay.
those are two very different things.
Okay. So what you're saying then is the difference is that concert wasn't for children. This thing was for children. And so these children's events should be children appropriate. Is that what you're saying?
I think that that's a common sense thing. If you're going
Yes,
to
I
create
agree
a
with you.
marketed event towards, yeah,
I agree with you. They should be children, like appropriate for children. That's why I support Drag Queen Story Hour, which I think has done a very, very good job by most accounts in like presenting family friendly options of queer culture towards young people. I greatly support it. If there's ever an instance where there is an event that is marketed towards children that's not children appropriate, I condemn it. I'm angry about it. But I think most people would have a better time actually helping children when it comes to like targeting this stuff. Just talking about things like the YouTube Kids algorithm and the type of stuff it puts in front of them. I feel like a lot of this is making mountains out of molehills, taking nitpicky examples and like highlighting this when there's much bigger fish to fry when it comes to this issue. Again, the YouTube algorithm and YouTube's Kids is something I point to all the time, which has extremely sexual things when it comes to like this weird Spider-Man and Elsa like videos that are put out to kind of just drag kids' attention in.
well, the problem is that even if you're doing something quote unquote seemingly harmless like Drag Queen Story Hour, you're still promoting something like drag, which is inherently adult by nature. I mean, there's always the worry that the kids are going to be like, "Wow, I like drag." And also, I agree,
Inherently, what do you mean by inherently adult by nature?
well, I mean, drag performance. It is adult entertainment. I don't know how you deny this. I mean, that is what the art form is.
Let me ask you a question then. So if I sit down in drag in front of a child and read The Very Hungry Caterpillar, are there going to be like adults in the background whistling and being like, "Oh yeah, that caterpillar is hungry"? Whoa! No, it's gonna be children's entertainment. Drag is an extremely wide spectrum. Drag is really just the bending of gender non-conforming behavior and a performance. That performance can be comedy, it can be dance, and it can be sexual. Keep the sexual stuff away from the kids. I don't really care about the comedy as long as it's age appropriate. I don't really care about the reading as long as it's age appropriate. That's why when I come back to the States, I might even host a drag queen story hour myself.
It's like getting an adult entertainer, like a porn star, and coming to read that porn star reads a book to children. Like, okay, maybe the book might be innocent by nature, and then you have her dressed in like provocative clothing. It's like, what is this person doing in front of children? This should not happen.
Okay, so this is a separate issue, but I think porn stars should be in front of children as long as they're not doing anything sexual. Um, I don't think they need to explain what their job is to the child or anything like that, but I think they should be allowed around children. But there are non-sexual drag performers.
That's not what I'm saying. I think the art form in itself is like sexual, like even if you can do it in a non-sexual way. And also you can argue the act of dressing up
wait,
as a gender
how can something be
sexual.
how can something be inherently sexual if you can do it in a non-sexual way?
I mean, reading a book in itself is non-sexual, but once you put on a drag performance, like I don't like I feel like there's some aspect of that.
Okay.
Like that's not a gender you identify as. That's a big issue I have with drag. Like being trans is just identify that. You're putting like drag people put on a identity that doesn't belong to them, akin to blackface, in my opinion. I know it's controversial. It's not the same, but it's
No, it's not akin to blackface. I don't think it is. I don't think the thing is with blackface, it was meant to demean and like diminish black people and like marginalize them in a way to like basically say about them like look how subhuman they are, look how unintelligent they are, et cetera, and it helped like reinforce like structures of power that like led to them being lynched and killed. I don't think Drag Queen Story Hour does that and really hurts anyone. Now, like again, like you're saying, like, oh, Drag Queen Story Hour this, Drag Queen Story Hour that, it's inherently sexual because it's in drag. But what's inherently sexual about it? Like, explain to me how a Drag Queen Story Hour is inherently sexual.
so like if you take a random person that isn't a drag queen that reads a innocent book that is not sexual, the problem is you are taking someone who works in an industry that is sexual, and even if they are not being sexual on the stage, you are promoting that industry on
the entire industry is sexual. Then, that's what you're saying.
Well, the act of drag
is inherently sexual.
act.
Okay, so what I'm looking
Yeah,
at.
why can't they just perform in non-drag? Why can't they just read the book?
Because they want to bend gender nonconformity. They want to be gender nonconforming. Being gender nonconforming isn't inherently sexual. If that's the case, then if I was to say, hell, you could even say my hair is inherently sexual because it's long, which doesn't exactly confide within gender roles of like man and woman. If I was to put a bow in it, would that then even be more sexual because that's gender non-conforming? Would this then be a sexual stream? Would I have to put myself in the hot tub category? I don't think it's as simple as they're in drag. Drag is inherently sexual. I look at drag as an art form. Art within it, it can be sexual, it can be non-sexual, just like a concert. A concert can be sexual or it can be non-sexual.
The thing is, even if you give this the most charitable outcome, like I know a lot of people say, well, actually, this is to promote LGBT positivity. Okay, but it's like, I'm a trans woman, right? I like pro positivity, but it's like, that's not the way to do it. Like, even
Why?
then, like, you admit that they admit that there's some kind of like agenda being pushed to push this like adult stuff onto children. It's not like innocently, like, we're just reading books.
Who admits that that they're pushing adult stuff onto children? What do you mean?
Well, even the people that like run this stuff, like they'll say to you, like, it's actually great that we're like promoting this onto children. Like, it's like, why do you need to promote this onto children?
I think you mean promoting acceptance of different people onto children. Yes, I do think that should be pushed on children to be accepting towards others. I think a nation's strength is its moral character and how it treats its youth and its elderly. And when it comes to treating its youth, I think being accepting of others is a good moral character for a nation to teach its youth. And I think queer people should be part of the people that are accepted.
But they're not being themselves on stage. So I don't buy that narrative. It's not like accepting yourself. No, this person is putting on a performance of somebody that isn't them. It's like, if you want to be accepted, put your actual gender identity on stage, but they're not doing that. They're putting on a show. They're putting on a performance of someone that's not them. That's not acceptance.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Have you ever like listened to rap music? Like, I mean, are you like a fan of rap music by chance?
Not hugely, but I've heard some songs.
Do you think that rap music should be allowed around children?
I think that, I mean, there's some like watered down songs that aren't super bad. Like, that's the thing. It's like, it depends on the song. Like, there are some songs that it's like WAP, maybe a child should not be listening to that song.
If you hear it,
but like, that doesn't mean it can't exist.
If you name rappers, most rappers, you say their name out loud, you're not saying their actual name. Ice-T's legal name is not Ice-T. That's his like performance name. That's his rapper name, right? And that's how he would perform, right? This is true for, say, the Wiggles. The Wiggles are actually a children-oriented band for children. Why are they going up and not using their real name and their normal everyday outfits, and they're dressing up in bright colors, all these performers, when they do their music? Because it's a performance and they have a performer name and they're performing, and so they have a fake name that they use to help the performance. They have these costumes, they have this music. And this is also true of queer culture, which drag is an example of. They have these performer names, they have these colorful outfits, and those performances can be sexual, they can be non-sexual, and as long as they're being age appropriate, I have no problem with them being around children. I do not want to hold queer culture to a different standard than we hold everybody else's culture, whether it be rap music or jazz or ballet or any other type of cultural form of art, paintings, for example.
Hello?
Hello, did you hear
Oh,
any of that?
yeah. No, I heard what you said. So, I thought you were still talking. My apologies. When you're talking about like the rappers and stuff, like I don't buy the comparison. Like, obviously, like if Cardi B is going to be like performing WAP in front of kids, I think there'd be a rightfully so outrage. In that, my
Yeah.
opinion, it's like it's similar but not the same as drag. I do think that if you're having an inherently sexual song, it's like maybe don't perform that song in an event for children.
Hmm.
And that's like kind of like how I see drag. And also when like these rappers, they don't cross dress in their performances. They're not like rapping these songs,
Really?
and their character isn't so different from their like persona. Like they probably put on like
What are you
a
talking
gold chain
about?
or something,
Are you
but they don't
what?
change their gender to perform. They don't like put on this over sexual like a man isn't going to cross
Are you
dress and rap
familiar
on
with David
stage.
Bowie?
Yeah, he's someone. I think people like that. Like I know, like people mention like the Harry Styles like wearing a dress thing, and I'm not for that. Like I don't think that they should be
So
allowed
you
to. I think
don't
it's offensive.
you don't think that people like Lil Nas X or David Bowie should be allowed to wear feminine clothing during their performances?
That's the thing. I wouldn't go as far to outright ban it, but I would much prefer they didn't. I'd much rather have conversations. It's like I think it's super
Um,
offensive to me as a trans woman to do that.
can I be quite frank with you?
Okay.
I couldn't give the slightest of a fuck if that offends you as a trans woman. Like what
So
I
why
what
don't
I
you
choose
care?
to wear when it comes to how I express myself in either performance or my personal life, whether I choose to be feminine as a feminine man or not, is nobody, quite frankly, nobody else's business. Clothing can be for anyone.
Certain clothing that's male and certain clothing that's female. That way I don't go in these situations where people are like doing pronouns or being like, wow, you're a man in a dress? That's so woke. That's so progressive. And it's like, no, you just mentioned cisgender trans woman. Like I hate these situations where it's like you have to
Well,
like
but that's not
go
the
and say your
fault. That's
pronouns to
not the
everybody.
fault of people expressing themselves and living the way they want to and expressing themselves for who they are. Nobody fall. Not most people, I would say, don't fall solidly into one category when it comes to how they express themselves. I would think most men would, if they could, probably express themselves in ways, not all the way, in some ways that are feminine. For example, me having long hair in at least Western culture is seen as a feminine thing, right? What I'm doing right now is feminine, right? But I don't care. I enjoy this. Sometimes I'll even, on occasion, put on makeup. Sometimes I'll do up my hair in a bow. I've even on occasion put on skirts, right? Not publicly. I'd be too scared to do it publicly. Genuinely. I think our society is like not looking at that in a very positive manner. But I'm completely free to express myself for who I am and saying, well, the societal standard is this is what a man wears and this is what a woman wears, so we must follow that, or that's offensive to trans people. That's ludicrous. That's ludicrous.
Well, I think it does cause direct harm, and that's why I don't like femboys and stuff. I think most people, the vast majority of people, do fall into a specific category. Not everybody, but like I said, I
So
mean,
should
a
I
lot of
stop
people.
wearing feminine clothing?
So when you're asking me to like say something about a specific person, that makes me come off as a bad person. I would prefer if people didn't do a
Well,
certain thing, but also I'm not going to be the kind of person that
Well, I
like
mean,
forces
I'm
people
I'm
to.
telling you to like, hold true to what you just said, right? Like for example, I said frankly to you, I don't care if that offends you as a trans person, right? That made me sound bad, especially to like my the typical audience that watches me like, "Oh, Dylan doesn't care about this trans person." Even though it's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I don't care if it offends you as a trans person because that right to self-expression and the way I'm talking about right now when it comes to people being able to bend gender stereotypes and express themselves in the way that queer activists have been fighting for a very long time matters to me more than your personal offense as a trans person. And so I bit the bullet on that, so I'd want you to bite the bullet. Do you think that people like me should not wear feminine clothing?
Yes, and also I do think it's kind of sad that you think that like trans women being able to express ourselves and not be like constantly misgendered if we don't pass. I do think that that's kind of sad, and I do think it's more important to basically have basic trans women who just want to pass be seen as normal people because I just want to be seen as a normal woman. I prefer if people did. And I think it's like much better to have a society where that be the case. I think it's better for all trans people if we build up this normativity. Like, I don't want to be seen as a freak show. I really don't.
I find it sad that you want me to confirm to the people who have been, telling us what queer people can and can't do for so long, conceding to their demands and saying, well, okay, I'll express myself as society wants me to. I'll wear my suit. I'll wear my flannel. I'll wear my jeans. I'll be the working husband, and I'll do what's necessary. I'll be one of the good queers in the suit and tie, and one that abides by the kind of like nuclear family stereotype of what a man is supposed to be. My response would be, I think it's sad that you want to basically conform to heteronormative standards when these standards should rightly be broken. And yeah, I think that's sad that you're so willing to concede queer people's personal expression for hoping, because this is a hope, that the right wing will just be like, okay, that's enough. Now we'll treat trans people with respect, which I don't think it's going to affect whether they treat you with respect whatsoever. I think they will take that and then they'll move on and they'll keep going. The eventual goal is the isolation of queer people once again from public life.
Well, the thing is that I love traditional gender roles and I fall neatly within them. And I think a lot of trans people do and would be happier in this society.
That's good for them, but that's not everybody. But that's not for everyone. I don't fall into traditional gender roles. There's a lot of people who don't fall into traditional gender roles. What about us? Are we just left high and dry and we have to basically help create this world that's good for you but not good for us?
Well, the problem is that the culture that I currently see does the opposite. It says, well, non-conforming people go first. Trans people, sorry, we're going to have to make things worse for you. And I'm tired of dealing with that. I'm tired of being pushed to the side of this.
We're not making the world worse for you. It's the far right and those who hate both of us that are making the world worse for you.
I don't know. I mean, I think that they are in some aspects. But
Me wearing a dress does not make the world any worse for you.
I think it makes more harmful and provides misconceptions. And I've talked to people who don't know much about trans stuff, and a lot of misconceptions come from these spaces. There's people on the right who don't know the difference between a drag queen and a trans woman, and that provides some of their transphobia. There's people on the right who see femboys and
how do you deal with that? How you deal with it is shut down the conversation, get rid of the drag queens, get rid of the men bending gender stereotypes or doing non-conforming gender expression, get rid of the women doing that, just shut it down, put it away, put it in the closet. And that's how we'll settle it. Make it as simple as possible for them to understand. And the best way to make it simple is to simply just shut ourselves down when it comes to how we express ourselves. My response to that is the exact opposite. I would say in this way, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Be as expressive as we can. Be as open as we can about what we're doing. When someone walks up to me and asks Dylan, why are you wearing a bow in your hair? Oh, because I think it looks pretty. And as a man, I don't think it's wrong for me to want to look pretty if I feel so. This is a free country. USA, well, even though I'm in Ukraine, USA, right? I think that's the best way to deal with it. Not because all we're doing is we're keeping the Band-Aid on. We got to rip it off at some point. We got to try to make this progress.
Think that the best way to increase the most amount of people to be trans inclusive, like a lot of conservatives are more willing to change their opinions. I think most people give them credit for. If you see a normal passing pretty trans woman who just acts like a normal cis woman, and even like a lot of like transphobes will see that and be like, oh yeah, she's just a woman, and then they'll really like think about it because that's not how they typically see trans people because the media is so awful depicting that. I'm sick of being told otherwise.
What about the trans women who don't pass?
Obviously, like I said,
the
things I'm advocating for would make it better for them too, because if they can go out and wear female clothing and people see them as a woman because they're wearing that gender expression, that key element, I think that makes it life better for them as well.
I guess, so what you're saying is to overcome the discomfort of being like, hello, sir. Oh, no, I'm a ma'am. Oh, okay. Hello, ma'am. Or hello, ma'am. Oh, actually, I'm a sir. Hello, sir. To overcome that, we should just lock in what clothes people are allowed to wear at birth so they don't bend gender expectations. My response to that is I think our continued liberation and our freedom when it comes to our expression is worth more than making conservatives more comfortable with queer people.
Okay, well, I disagree, and liberation of who I would ask, because that's not my liberation. That's the opposite.
It's my liberation. It's my liberation. It's not oppression for you, because in the long run, we'd all benefit by being able to wear whatever clothes we want.
No, I don't think we benefit in a society where people ask, like, they don't ask cis people to ask their pronouns every 5 seconds, but they only ask trans people to, and it makes them think that they're super woke and accepting. Meanwhile, trans women are suffering and hate their lives for this. I think there is a real world impact, and people don't want to talk about
What
or
about
acknowledge it because it makes them feel uncomfortable.
what about trans women who don't wear dresses that want to wear suits and ties? What happens to them?
Well, that's their problem. I mean, if they want
Ooh,
to be seen as
so
a woman, wear women's clothing. Maybe you don't have to wear a dress, but there's female clothing that isn't dresses.
so that's interesting. So we need to make it specifically. It feels like okay. This feels incredibly self-centered. This feels like you want to make it so that the movement for queer liberation is accustomed about making life as comfortable as possible for you.
Well, we've had decades of trans people being pushed to the side, and now they're trying to push us to the side again. I'm sick of being
What?
told,
But it's
like,
only
"Oh, no
your
homo" and all that
version.
stuff.
Your version of what a trans person is who needs to feel comfortable. Trans women who don't want to wear sunflower dresses and be the stereotype of barefoot and pregnant and like the in the nuclear family household. Those ones, kind of sucks for you. I mean, tough shit. Wear a dress, bitch. That's what it feels like.
Well, I think that those people should do whatever they can in their power to be seen as more feminine if they want to be seen as female. I like I said, you don't have to be super extreme about it, but there's clothing that's female and there's clothing that's male. You should wear female clothing at all times if you're a woman, or other way around.
You sound like my church pastor from when I was a kid.
You know, and that's funny.
I
Maybe
remember,
we
I
get along. I
remember,
don't know.
I remember her coming out like, women wear skirts. God told me that women wear skirts. And she literally said, women told me. God told me that women wear skirts. And so I've never wore jeans ever since. Like, I just, this country, what makes it great, in my opinion, is this idea of personal liberty and like this idea that you should be able to live the way you want to live as long as it doesn't like hurt other people or affect other people in a way that's gonna kill them or like rob them or hurt them. And that's one of the things I like about the United States. And this is treading upon that because you want to make it as easy as possible for conservatives who already don't like us anyway, the broad movement generally. We need
Yeah,
to
well,
make it as easy for them to understand. I just don't understand what's the huge motive there. It just sounds like you just want to make yourself comfortable, and the rest of us, it's like tough shit. That's just how you gotta be from now on. It's nuclear family trans woman hour. That's what it sounds like.
well, that's the thing is like I wouldn't necessarily call myself super religious or super conservative, although I might come off that way, and I understand why. But I think that some people being expressing themselves and pushing gender norms. I love traditional gender roles. I don't want to erase gender, and the gender abolitionism tries to erase trans people. It absolutely does. I think some people expressing themselves in a way that doesn't conform to their gender identity does hurt other people, and I think it's good if I can appeal to these conservative types that don't most trans people don't even bother to try.
Well, what about the people who are hurt by the fact that they're not able to express themselves the way they want to live when it comes to bending these idea of like this is man's clothing, this is woman's clothing, and only men and women are allowed to wear that? What about me being told like, Dylan, you know how you want to feel pretty? No, that's not your role. Either become a woman or you can't feel pretty. Like this is absurd.
Well, I think, and like I said, it makes me feel bad, when I'm sitting to someone, in front of my face and telling them this. But
Why do you think it
I
makes you
think
feel
that,
bad?
I mean, I don't, it puts you in an uncomfortable place to like, tell somebody, hey, I think this is how you should be. Like, I don't want to be that kind of person because I don't think I am. But when I have to defend a point, I have to say what I want to say.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, I just think it's better for, people like you can, if you identify a certain way, that's great. But these social norms and these social,
I
like,
identify as a
there's
pretty
social
bitch,
constructs.
and so I want to dress as one.
Well, I think social, like, gender clothing is social construct, right?
Mm-hmm.
Clothing is a social construct. Like, it doesn't, like, some cultures, like, skirt, like, kilts and, those other countries, right? So, if that's the case, then why is it so important? If gender is a social construct, then isn't it important that it be strictly to each thing, that we have something that fits the role? It doesn't necessarily matter what it is, but it's important that we have something. And the purpose of clothing is to identify the gender identity that someone is going towards. That is why
I
you wear
mean,
clothing.
let me be for
To
real. If somebody walks up to me and asks me if I'm trans because I'm wearing a dress, I just say, "No, I'm a man. I just like wearing a dress," and then I move on.
But that's harmful to me though,
Do you think
because
that's?
that's
Do you
why
think
people
it's
see me as a man wearing a
not?
dress.
Do you think it's not possibly harmful to me to be misgendered or being told that like, hey, that's like, hey, are you a woman or da da da? Like that couldn't be possibly harmful to me. Or again, you're skipping this. What about all the trans women who don't want to have to wear sunflower dresses all the time? Do you think this type of setup that you're making, which is only going to lead to them being misgendered at higher rates, if the societal standard is men wear this, women wear this, don't break the standards, they're going to be misgendered at higher rates than ever.
Well, that's the thing. They can wear female clothing that doesn't have to be super sunflower dress,
Okay,
but there is still
and you
clothing
can
that's
get
identifiably
and
female.
you can, like, work with the rest of us to get rid of this idea that men have to wear this and women have to wear that, and that everybody can wear whatever they want to wear, and your gender expression isn't necessary, and you being a woman or being a man isn't necessarily tied to the type of clothing you wear. I mean, me putting on a dress doesn't make me a woman, no?
Well, don't think that it like I think it's like I have a female brain, men have male brains. That's just my opinion.
Okay.
I think that the brain makes you gendered, right? But it's like gender clothing is a good way to signal to the world. It's not the only way, but it's a major way to signal to the world what your gender identity is. So it'd be nice if people just looked at that and were like, "Oh, that's a woman because she's wearing a dress and she has makeup on." And like I wish it were just that simple, but for some reason, people want to make it needlessly complicated when it doesn't have to be.
It really does feel like this feels like you're prioritizing your comfort over everybody else's.
Like, I don't see why that's, like, a problem, though. It's like, if a man wants to wear a dress in public and then he's mad that people misgender him, like, that's his problem. Like, I don't understand, like, how can you wear a dress in public
Well, no, let me
and then
be
be
clear.
shocked that people
Let
think
me
you're a
be
woman?
clear. If somebody comes to me and asks me if I'm a woman, I'm like, okay, I'm not, and then I move on, but I want to continue to wear that. That's not the question. The question you're establishing isn't men, like, this is what I think, like, people, like, what dresses should be this would be that. You're also saying, like, dresses should be female gendered and suits should be male gendered. You're also saying that people who don't fall into those categories shouldn't, like, express outside of that. So it's not as simple as, like, me being, hey, are you a woman? And I'm saying, oh, no, I'm not. And I, go about my day. I continue. You're saying, no, you shouldn't even be in that situation. You shouldn't be wearing a dress. You shouldn't be expressing yourself as you want to.
Well, I'll tell you, it causes me great pain. I'll give you an example from
Do
my
you
real
think
life.
do
First
you
year,
think me not being able to express myself doesn't cause me any pain? Me being embarrassed to go out and wear clothing that I think makes me look good, and me being embarrassed to even walk in the street in some of the clothing I want to, doesn't do you think that makes me feel good? Doesn't. I don't like it
with
at all.
somebody first year of college, somebody who was a drag queen, and we were having these kind of pretty civil conversations. And I said, why drag bothers me. I go to this event, this person's fully in drag. And I say to them privately, it's like, hey, this makes me look bad. I wish you didn't do this. And then my parents were there, and my parents were like, oh my God, that's so awful. You should apologize. And then I apologized, but I didn't want to apologize because I felt like I have the right to say that this bothers me. Like, you're performing like it's mocking my identity, and I'm tired of everyone around me acting like it's this awful thing for me to feel. I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of it.
Okay. And I'm tired of people telling me what I can and can't put on.
It's the difference is that when I am being a woman, that is my genuine identity. When someone is a drag queen or cross-dressing or
Wait,
whatever, that is not their genuine identity. So mine trumps the others. I'm sorry. Me being myself is more important than someone not being themselves and
would
performing a false identity.
by performing a false identity.
By
Why? But this
wearing
them
clothing
being
of
in drag doesn't even, like, what, that doesn't rob you of your identity.
I think I think it makes it really hard, and it gives the conservatives a
Do
lot of
you do
fuel.
you really think that drag is tremendously hurting trans people? How?
Yes, I do. And
How?
I've seen it happen to me. Like I said, people who think that trans women and drag, there's so many misconceptions that stem from it.
Yeah,
So
so
many
the
transphobic
problem
and
is the
sexist jokes that come from drag.
misconceptions. We smash the misconceptions. We don't say, well, since you're not understanding us, we'll just be quiet and wear what you want us to wear, okay? That's seceding them ground for no reason.
I think that that's a naive worldview because their existence itself causes the misconceptions. So to pretend that just makes other people feel more comfortable when it's the reality is that existing in itself is what caused
The
misconceptions. You can't
misconception
just be like, well, let's.
the misconceptions are from the societal standard that this is what a man has to wear and this is what a woman has to wear, and people's conceptions being born in that society. I think that's what's causing the misconception. It's this false notion that this is what a man is supposed to wear and this is what a woman is supposed to wear. This is what they have to wear.
I think that's a misconception. I just think that that's the way it is, and I
It's
like the
just
way that it is. That
okay, and I don't like the way that it is. I want to wear clothing that more aligns with what I feel I would like to look like.
well, I mean, I don't know if there's anything else we can cover. I think I've said what I needed to say. If there's anything else you want to point out, let me know. But I mean, I think we're just gonna have to agree to disagree.
Okay, I disagree. Um,
Okay.
I would also note that drag performers have been at the center of the fight for queer liberation for like, well, I mean, ever since Stonewall. I mean, they have been at the center of it, and they have been like a vital role in like actually achieving things like gay marriage and adoption rights and things like that. And it has been through their aggressive tactics, and it has been through their uncompromising position that we've gotten that progress.
Well, I would say the issue here is that these are like a lot of, I can't speak for everybody, but a lot of trans women put themselves in this community because it's more societally acceptable to be seen as like a mocking performer of a gender that you're not than actually be seen as a trans woman. That's a problem with society. Like a lot of trans women do drag not because they want to, but because that's the place they feel most accepted in, and that's awful. That should never be the case because that is a environment where they are not being themselves. People don't see them as themselves. People see them as a man in a dress, and I think that drag existing actually causes them more harm. In a better world, these people would just be able to be themselves
I think
and not do
you
drag.
you've acknowledged the problem. It's a societal problem. The problem isn't that we need to change. We don't need to change. Society needs to be more accepting of the fact that we're here and we're not going anywhere. You have acknowledged the problem. The problem is society forced them to be in a position where they felt like this was the only way they could express themselves. I believe people should be allowed to express themselves if they want to through drag, and that society should be allowing and tolerant of trans people existing not only in drag or not even at drag at all if they don't want to, anywhere. That they should be allowed to live as they want to as a trans woman. You've
I
acknowledged the
think
problem.
that
It's societal. It's not the problem of us just being here or practicing our culture.
I think that society has a lot of the problem. But I also, even if there was no societal impact, it would still bother me. It would still bother me. So, I mean, that is a big portion of it. I'm not going to lie, but I don't, and I also am not naive enough to think that, like, people could just magically change their minds. Like, there's always going to be
Do
ignorant
you
people out there.
let's say it even is somewhat offensive towards women, right? Let's say that for a second. Do you have like a similar opinion about things like South Park or Family Guy or The Simpsons? People shouldn't watch these shows because they can make fun of um uh groups of people that might be marginalized.
I'd have to watch specific episodes or like certain parts. I mean, there's some offensive jokes on there. I don't think that that's like the worst thing in the world. I wouldn't say that that's
Do you,
necessarily the same, but I have to
do you
see
remember
specific clips
do you
or
remember there
something.
was like a documentary released about a poo, right? That was like, well, people would always compare me to a poo as a kid, and I didn't like it. It was bad, and that led to a poo like being kicked out of the poo's gone. A poo was assassinated. Okay, a poo was assassinated by the Simpsons writers, like shot, taken out back, bam, executed, right? And to me, right, like if the Simpsons wanted to do that, I mean that's up to them. But I don't like this idea of just like purging these cultures and self expressions completely, or saying like telling people no, you're not allowed to do
Mhm.
that. Like we can criticize it if we want to, but like I'm just asking. Like we know that these shows have done like offensive caricatures before for humor and jokes, um, and they've caused probably more actually recognizable damage. Even though I don't think it's really much at all than drag ever has. I mean, look at Kick a Ginger Day, for example, from South Park.
Yeah, well, I would say in the case of Apu specifically, I mean, that's a character that's like very stereotypical. Like, I think a white man actually voices him. Like, in my
Yeah.
opinion, like removing him is stupid because like the old episodes are still going to be there. They're still going to put reruns of it. I think they should like change the character and make it like better. I think like actually removing it's probably not the right like thing to do in that specific instance. But obviously, like that's not something that impacts me directly, so I don't know. Um, I I I don't know about the ginger thing from South Park. That's interesting.
I mean, I
Um,
guess what I'm trying to say is like, I mean, things can be offensive, even. Things can be offensive or dastardly, even. But as long as they're not really hurting anyone, and that everybody who's trying to watch Medium has some general understanding that this is jokes and this is comedy, and we're joking here and nobody's getting hurt. Um, the kind of a know your audience situation. I think it's fine, and I don't think that the people who go to drag shows walk away from it with the idea of like, oh, all women are bimboish whores. Like, I don't think anybody walks away from a drag show thinking that. I would say actually, if you're going to a drag show, the odds are you have a generally progressive view of women on average compared to the average American. Like,
well, I
if you would,
think
let me
that
ask you a question. If you were to poll somebody at a drag show compared to say any other place in the country on like what do they think of Roe versus Wade getting overturned, I would tell you probably 95% to 90% of the people in there are going to say I'm against it.
probably right, but like that in that case, like I still think it like mocks women and trans women specifically, and also I'm pro life myself, but that's like a whole different thing that I don't want to get into. They just don't speak to me, and also it's like I think trans women specifically are the most impacted
So
and are the most at harm from
how does
this.
this how does this supposed mocking, which I don't even necessarily agree with, but let me just grant it to you. How does the supposed mocking hurt women?
Well, it hurts. I mean, like in the same way that like drag or blackface was offensive. Like you're doing these
Again,
overly
I
dramatic.
how blackface interacted with existing power structures that continued the lynching, murder, and oppression of of civil rights for the black community. How does drag, as it exists today, or as it existed in the queer movement, which is what we're mostly talking about here, how did it further compound women's oppression in any way?
Because when you're talking about like it's really harmful to trans, like first of all these over exaggerations, right? Like these people are not putting on makeup the same way that
Okay,
cis women do.
but
These people are putting on these over exaggerated wigs. Like
okay.
it's like a mockery. It's not
Okay,
how
okay,
women present.
you're saying it's a
It's making
mockery.
a joke of
Okay,
gender. It's making a joke of gender.
I'm telling you I don't care because I don't think it hurts anybody. So my question is, how does it hurt people? And it seems that most of this is just like a kind of like personal offense. Yeah, it's not really this is oppressing us or this is compounding existing structures to make women. This is gonna take women's right to vote away or something, or it's gonna like I don't know like make women like get more hate crimes or something. Which blackface absolutely did do. It helped isolate black people. It did. How does that do that for drag? It seems this is mostly personal offense.
Well, I think that drag existed in the same time as blackface. If you look at the history, they existed coexistently together. I think that drag has just been able to manipulate people into thinking that it's woke and it allowed to exist
Okay,
despite the
but
dark.
you're still not addressing my question. You're saying okay, I don't care if it existed during the same time blackface did. So did a lot of art and performance. How does it oppress and hurt like societally the same way blackface did? Because blackface interacted with systems of power and oppression. It was almost like the part of the media arm of keeping black people away from the vote and getting lynched and used by organizations like the Ku Klux Klan. I don't see people using drag in any way to try to take away a woman's right to choose or taking away a woman's right to vote or any of these things at all. I don't see that. So how is drag like I just want to know how is it hurting somebody?
Yeah.
You're just saying, well,
So
they're exaggerating and they're doing mean spirited okay, I don't really care that much. How is it hurting?
because it's part of the societal thing that's happening right now that scares me is that they're trying to get rid of gender. They're trying to say, look, a man can wear a dress and like a man can do all of this stuff. Men can do all of this stuff too. And be seen as the same. And when you do that, when you say anyone can wear anything, and that clothing is not gender. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to say that clothing does not have gender. A dress can be worn by anybody, male or female. What they do is they negate it to only biological sex, which is the TERF argument, which is why TERFs love drag queens and stuff. Like it basically it makes it so that biological sex is the only thing that matters and that gender identity doesn't. It is the exact opposite of what I advocate for, and I'm tired of being told it's the same community as me.
Okay, so you're saying that the turfs love it, but also most queers and most progressives, most Democrats, drag. Even though there are right wing drag assisted in the military, right wing people have participated in drag. It's mostly left wing, and I would say the most like it's very queer. And so just saying like turfs like it so much, doesn't really matter to me because like also a lot of non-turfs like it. I would say there's more non-turfs that like drag than turfs who like drag. Um, but like you're saying that the way it oppresses women is by telling people that people can wear whatever they want. That sounds more like liberation and expression than it does sound like the oppression of women. That sounds like a good society to me. That sounds like something I would like to be a part of. If women's oppression is that anyone can wear whatever they want, I can live with that.
Well, I think it's more of a oppression on trans women specifically, and I think it's a lot of people have been deluded into thinking it advocates for them. I know you have a panel coming on very soon, so I probably want to wrap this up soon, just so you can prepare for that.
We can do another
if there's
5 minutes.
like,
Yeah, we can do another 5 minutes.
okay, cool.
So,
Is there any? Sorry, no, you go.
So it seems like you're like, so it doesn't seem like it's really hurting women specifically. Maybe it seems that like the crux of your argument is that this like is making it harder for trans people because people see drag and they think drag is trans people, and therefore they think like that like clothes is for. It makes it harder for people who are wearing sundresses and like trying to dress as a woman, as a trans woman, to be identified as a woman because people might think, oh well, maybe that's a man in a dress or a man dressing femininely.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's basically how I feel.
Okay, and I guess like for me, the solution there is to try to like generally just like I would be willing to say that I think it's more likely that if I wear dresses and a bunch of other stuff, it's more likely that I'm gonna be identified as a woman than somebody like a passing trans woman is gonna be identified as a man, right? Because they're gonna know. I think more people know the ins and outs of like trans people than they do drag culture. Drag culture has gotten a lot more attention by like RuPaul and stuff, but I still think like trans people are like more well known. This is it's a more long existing societal political issue that's been in the public space longer. I just don't.
Well,
yeah.
The problem is I think more people are accepting most like gender critical or people in those types. They accept drag more because it's like, oh, well, a man can wear all of these clothing, but they're not actually women. Like they know that they're not actually women, so they can accept that. But they hate trans people because it's like, no, I actually am a woman. I am a woman all of the time. And I'm not making fun of anything. Like they see it. It's like, oh, it's just like a funny little performance, guys. They're not actually, and they know it. But meanwhile, me being my actual self pisses them off for some reason. And so it's like they have it all backwards.
So the solution to me isn't let's crack down on the drag so maybe they'll be more accepting of trans people. I think the solution is try to fight to just make them more accepting of trans people and not crack down upon this art form.
See people be more accepting of trans people. I just don't personally think that that's the way to do it. I think that drag is inherently harmful to the cause, but that's my opinion.
Well, I mean, I don't think you've like. I asked you like, what societal harm does it cause, and it says like it says it makes a mockery, but that doesn't like the societal harm.
Yeah, I mentioned it's harmful to trans women specifically. I think I've mentioned that multiple times now.
Because it leads to you guys being misgendered?
Yeah, it leads to that, and it leads to so many uncomfortable situations. I've seen it myself, that things that did not happen when I first came out in 2014. I've seen the culture take a turn for the worse, but these modern trans people don't know any better. They don't know what it could be. But it's like people don't have our concerns. Like we're not important to them. They're pushing us to the side and expecting us to be okay with it. When we've been pushed to the side for so long before, and we were finally getting a chance, and they want to take it away from us.
Well, I don't think drag performers or non-gender conforming queer people who dress femininely want to take away your rights. I think that is a massive straw man. I think that they just want to express themselves the way they see themselves. They want to be who their true selves, which might not be a lumberjack or a suit and tie man or a woman in a big sunflower dress. It might be a woman in a suit. It might be a man in a dress. I think that I think that it feels like you're trying to trade the social uncomfortability of possibly being misgendered as it's more normalized that men can wear dresses and women can wear suits for other people's ability to be them true selves and how they express themselves with their gendered clothing. You're trying to trade that. And again, you're saying that this hurts trans women, but it's only, again, your specific version of a trans woman, not trans women in suits or not non like sundresses and feminine clothing. So that's what it feels like you want society to be accustomed not to help the most queer people as physically possible and like try to make a society that's generally the most accommodating to as many queer people as we can, but to your version of what a trans woman is supposed to be. Which I have a problem with that.
I'm just gonna have to disagree with you. I'm sorry.
Okay, it's fine.
All right. Well, I'm gonna let you get your panel going.
We didn't even get to talk about Ukraine, which that's my takes there get a lot spicier.
Yeah, my takes are spicy on Ukraine, so maybe there's a sequel in the future, maybe.
Yeah, look, my take is simple, and I want to put this thing in Putin's mouth. Okay, that's my take.
Well, I just don't think the U.S. should get involved, and I think trans women are being like forced to stay in the country, being forced to fight, and basically commit suicide. And I think that they're being awful, and it's transphobic. Those laws that are forcing trans women to not leave because they're trans. Okay, that's my take.
I agree that that's bad. I still support Ukraine.
Well, okay.
It'd be like, for example, it'd be like Germany and the Soviet Union are invading Poland. I would care, but did you hear that they don't have gay marriage? More at 7. It's like, okay, yeah, that's terrible. That's bad. But I think that the trans people and gay people being killed by the Russian bombardment, which is most absurdly more homophobic and transphobic than the Ukrainian people are as a percentage that the polling data shows and the government is. So it's like, the thing, if you ask queer Ukrainians, they're going to tell you out and out, like, they want the Russians to leave. They want Russia to leave. That would help protect them.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't think we have time to like get into a full debate on this, so I'm probably gonna head out. I'm gonna leak my stuff in chat.
Okay.
Thanks for having me on.
Okay, you have a good one. We can. You want to talk about it next week, maybe?
Yeah, next week. Next week. Message me on like something. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
You have a good one. Bye bye.
You too.